Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. We are live and national. If you want to get in on it, feel free. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And there's a lot of breaking news, stuff that's broken in the last couple of hours, stuff that's broken in the last hour or so. Of course, thoughts, prayers, condolences are with the 3 Pennsylvania police officers that were killed in a shooting in central Pennsylvania. 2 officers also in critical condition. The shooter was taken out, is what I understand. We'll get into that a little bit in a moment. There's also, well, let's do it now, right? Now that we have it here. These 3 officers were killed. 2 remain critical but in stable condition. And this is according to the state police commissioner, Colonel Christopher Paris. The shooting suspect is dead after being shot by police. Other law enforcement officers were on their way to arrest the shooter after a charge of stalking and criminal trespass was filed earlier today in York County. The shooter, appeared to be lying in wait when officers arrived and ambushed him. He unfolded, this whole thing unfolded on Har Road in North Cordes Township. And really just a horrible thing, really is a horrible thing, out in kind of like farmland with barns all over it. And that's the latest. Really, really, really unfortunate. I think we do have a clip on the latest with this, number 19. Check this out.
Breaking news out of York County, Pennsylvania. Just moments ago, state police confirmed that 3 police officers are dead. 2 others are in critical condition, all after being shot. Police shot and killed the gunman. There is no current threat, they say, to the community. Now, police were on the scene on a rural farm to issue some sort of an arrest warrant over a domestic dispute. Apparently, they had been on the property the day before. There are reports they were there to arrest somebody for the charges of stalking and criminal trespassing, leading to speculation perhaps that the suspect had been lying in wait for the police. This is a rural area of Pennsylvania. It is about 115 miles west of Philadelphia. York County is the site. This is how one neighbor described the shooting.
When I passed the barn, I heard gunshots within a few minutes, and I saw an officer go down on the road, in the middle of the road. Pretty alarming.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro just moments ago said he met with the families of those 3 slain police officers. Despite their grieving, he says those families took time to say how proud they are of their loved ones. The governor said this kind of violence needs to stop.
Truly, truly unfortunate. I don't know all the details, as you just heard in that report. I know probably just about as much as she just shared with you. This happened just a little while ago. But as we get more information, I'll bring you up to speed on it. Truly, truly, it's always sad, right? When people die, it's always sad when you hear people in law enforcement die. Some of my family has been in law enforcement, and, it just hits a little bit differently when it feels a little bit closer to home. And some other news. I just left Washington Heights. That's the upper part of Manhattan. And, of course, our studio is lower Manhattan, but the event I was at was the Latino community in New York City getting together for who? For Curtis Sliwa. Curtis Sliwa getting a ringing endorsement from Dominicans in Washington Heights, a largely Dominican area, Inwood and Washington Heights, as well as many parts of the Bronx. Lots of Dominican Americans there. And the Dominican American Republican Club gave him a ringing endorsement with a lot of people. I saw a couple of my listeners there, which was really cool. And to top it all off, there's a Dominican singer named Raul Acosta. And Raul is the lead singer of a band called Oro Solido, which in English is solid gold. And they've toured the world many times over the last 20 years, and probably even closer to 30 years. And Raul Acosta was on deck to give personal endorsement to Curtis Sliwa. He mentioned something that I thought was really nice. He said, when I was growing up, there was two really big figures in New York. He said there was Donald Trump and Curtis Sliwa. He said one was a billionaire that you couldn't help but look up to, and the other one was in the streets with the guardian angels running the safety patrol. And he said when I was in 6th grade, I became a safety patrol officer in my school helping the crossing guard because of Curtis Sliwa. So I thought that was a really nice thing to hear. And he sings many famous songs, but one of them was they changed the words around to endorse Curtis, and they made it a version of the song called The One with the Little Red Hat, The One with the Little Red Hat. In Spanish, it goes, El de la gorrita roja, El de la gorrita roja. It was really, really cool. They had some live instruments and everything. Lots of people, really well-attended event in Washington Heights, Dominicans for Curtis Sliwa. So the campaign continues to heat up in New York City. And a couple of other things I want to talk about. Of course, Kash Patel having a showdown in Congress today. We're going to talk with a member of Congress momentarily to get the scoop on that and a couple of other things. And then there's this. Now, you guys remember a couple of months ago, it was Stephen Colbert, right? Stephen Colbert lost his job. And, I casually said, hey, look, are they hiring? Because, I do late night radio. It's not TV. Of course, I do have a face for radio, but we can work on it, right? I'm in the gym. Let's go. Let's make a deal. I didn't hear anything from CBS. Well, now Jimmy Kimmel, ABC, Disney, Nexstar, they're saying they're pulling Jimmy Kimmel out. He's no longer going to be on TV, at least indefinitely, they said. Why? Spreading disinformation on Charlie Kirk. Listen to this one.
Disney and the ABC network are taking Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air indefinitely. This follows a controversy over comments the late-night comedian made Monday night about Charlie Kirk's suspected killer and the MAGA movement and their reaction to the assassination. Let's get straight to CNN's chief media affairs correspondent, Brian Stelter. Brian, what is going on?
That's right. This is fast developing this afternoon, Jake, amid pressure from the Trump-aligned FCC. And in the past few minutes, ABC confirmed to CNN that Kimmel's show will be off the air, quote, indefinitely. We have not yet heard from Kimmel or his representatives. That's how quickly this has been developing. But let's back up and look at what Kimmel actually said on the program that has caused controversy. This is from Monday night in his Monday evening monologue. Kimmel suggested that the alleged killer of Charlie Kirk might have been a pro-Trump Republican. He said, quote, the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. He said in between the finger pointing, there was grieving. Kimmel was expressing what we've heard some other liberals say in recent days, that the motives are unclear and that maybe the suspect in this case was a Republican or was some sort of far-right fringe figure. Of course, there has been a lot of discussion about that in recent days. There's a lot of evidence pointing in other directions about the suspect. But Kimmel was on the air talking about this, making a very serious commentary amid his jokes in his monologue Monday night. Here's where it became interesting earlier today. The FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, went on a far-right webcast and condemned Kimmel and urged ABC to suspend him. He also talked about possible regulatory punishments of Disney because there are lots of different stations that have licenses with the FCC. Within the past hour, we've heard from a big owner of stations that have affiliations with ABC, a company called Nexstar, saying that they were going to suspend Kimmel's show on their station. So in other words, about 24 stations were refusing to air Kimmel's show tonight as a result of this controversy.
Again, that is the report from CNN, right? Jake Tapper and Brian Stelter. Now, we play you the CNN clip so that nobody says that I'm not fair and I'm not balanced. And I'm not going to sit here and relish in some late-night host losing a job. Shoot, I'm a late-night host, and I don't want to lose my job. But I am going to say you can't go on this platform of mass media and spread this information. And again, he's entitled to an opinion. The action they took was on them. But I've got to say, when you give these reports and say a far-right webcast, what was the far-right webcast? I know of one or two, and I bet you that's not the ones that Commissioner Carr was on. So as that develops, we'll give you more on that. But I want to get into the showdown with Kash Patel on Capitol Hill. We're going to do that straight ahead with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
You wrote a book called Government Gangsters. You identified 20 individuals in that book. You put me on that list, at the top of the list. Thank you. My children find it flattering. 20 of those individuals have been investigated or have had adverse actions. Director, considering that you have identified these people as, quote, government gangsters, will you recuse yourself from making any investigation decisions about these individuals?
Anyone that has been terminated at the FBI has been done so
the
because
question
they failed
again,
to meet the muster in their constitutional
I will
obligation.
work on the audio-visual capabilities.
I'm going to borrow your terminology and call bullshit on your entire career in Congress.
Reclaiming my time,
it has been a disgrace to the American people.
I'm reclaiming my time.
You can reclaim your time all you want.
Mr. Chairman, you're going to allow a witness to speak this way? Mr. Chairman, would you
recuse yourself, Director?
The gentleman has no time.
Mr. Chairman,
would you admonish the witness not to insult members?
My question is, will you, Director, recuse yourself, yes or no, from investigating or making decisions about the 60 individuals, including myself, that you identified as government gangsters? Yes or no?
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness may respond if he would like.
And the answer was no, as I heard. You wrote a book called
That is Congressman Eric Swalwell going at it with FBI Director Kash Patel. And I got to tell you, I wish I was in that room today with a little bit of popcorn. These exchanges were explosive and so entertaining. But this is real life, so I'm going to put my serious hat on and bring in our guest. She is the Congresswoman for the 24th Congressional District in Texas, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on again. And it was an explosive testimony, wasn't it?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, really. A part of me, and it could be the partisan part of me, says, I'm glad we have an FBI director with, to borrow a Jewish term, some chutzpah to, some cojones to really stand up to these guys when they try to bully them. And, of course, there's critics saying that, it's not the right decorum and this and that. But at the end of the day, I think there's so much, and I mean, you know this better than all of us. You work there. These are your colleagues. This is a circus sometimes, and they just have these circuitous debates for show, Congresswoman.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, here's the fact. You got, under Kash Patel, the FBI has become the premier law enforcement agency that we wanted it to be, and that Democrats absolutely hate it. And I think that's why you see, lunatic after lunatic between Cory Booker and Eric Swalwell and Jasmine Crockett, who are spewing this nonsense. They try to get these sound bites, right? Because then they use these sound bites, they put them on social media, they put them in emails to get, raise money, and their behavior was utterly disgraceful. They have hated Kash Patel from day one, because if you remember, he exposed the Russiagate lies, right, and the scandal, and he laid bare the weaponization of the FBI that went after President Trump, conservative organizations, including Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. And they hate that now the director, Patel, has turned the FBI into from being a puppet of the Democrat and deep state taskmasters into this effective crime-fighting organization. And what does it do? It's hammering down on drug cartels, on violent gangs, on drug runners who want to poison and have killed Americans, and cyber criminals. And when the American people see how truly meaningful that the FBI could actually be in protecting their communities and their families, I think it's an absolute, utter embarrassment. It's an indictment of how big a failure the FBI was under Democrat control.
Yeah, no, really, really well put. And there's this fascination. And again, look, I mean, I would say, to be fair, we had a similar fascination with trying to make things fair with Benghazi, right? This is not the same, but it was an unending series of hearings. And I think sometimes the public becomes kind of just fatigued by all of that. And I feel like the public has reached this level of fatigue with Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, some people call here, wanting to talk about that every day. I don't know how much more blood we can get out of that stone. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's been very clear that I think Kash was, Director Patel was very clear today. They are releasing as much as they possibly can that the courts will allow them to. They are still being investigated. You don't just allow files to we're just going to open up everything. You want to make sure that you are protecting, the victims who don't want their names public. You don't know the information that's in these videos. It may be illegal. You don't want that out. The courts have always controlled that, and that is exactly what they're doing. And let's face it, if this was anything that would have been released that could have embarrassed Republicans, all 4 years of the Biden administration, when they had these documents, they would have been jumping at the gun. They would have been biting at the bit, to release those. So, yes, I do think a lot of this is political theater. And I think the purpose of them trying to drag down all of these folks that are in the Trump administration is they don't want to be able to highlight the good that the Trump administration is doing. I mean, if you just think about just a few of the things that Kash has cited as successes that they've had in the 7 months. They've only been in office for 7 months, but they've arrested, more than 23,000 violent criminals, which, by the way, is twice as many year to date as last year. They've taken over 6,000 firearms off the street that can't be used by gangs and thugs. They've identified and located 4,700 child victims, which, by the way, was a 35% increase over last year in just 7 months. But perhaps, I think more importantly, is they've pushed 1,000 FBI agents out of the D.C. Bureau to go operate in regions, throughout the country that are combating crime. And they're, bringing aid to local law enforcement. And we are now on pace, get this, we're now on pace to produce the lowest murder rate in the U.S. history. They have helped seize 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl, which is a 25% increase over last year. That's enough fentanyl to kill a third of the country. I can go on and on and on. Democrats are embarrassed because this administration is bringing the receipts, and the last thing they want to do is highlight that.
I think you're right. And, now that you're bringing up crime and all of this stuff that's going on related to crime and violent crime in particular, President Trump tweeting out not that long ago that he is designating Antifa a terrorist organization. And I think this designation is going to have a lot of impact, especially given, kind of what we saw last week and the potential ties and funding of similar types of organizations. So I want to get your thoughts on that, Congresswoman. But first, we're going to take a quick pause. And, of course, amigos, if you want to join the program, the number 833-4-VALDES. We're coming right back with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from the 24th Congressional District in Texas. More to come straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
And the shell casings have multiple references to slogans that Antifa has popularized. I believe there is considerable money funding it. I would note that I've introduced legislation called the Stop Funders Act. Stop Funders Act would add rioting to the list of predicate offenses under RICO. I believe the money should be tracked and prosecuted under RICO. And both the Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots of a couple of years ago and the pro-open border riots in Los Angeles and other cities of this past year, I believe there was significant money behind those riots. I'm not the only person who noticed at the anti-Semitic protests and violent protests on college campuses that many of the tents all matched. And so I would ask, would it aid your ability to prosecute these matters if Congress passed into law the Stop Funders Act and if rioting was added to the list of predicate offenses for RICO?
Yes. That again, Senator Ted Cruz from the great state of Texas and Director Kash Patel. And again, this comes on the heels, that was yesterday's exchange, but this is what is the new stuff. President Trump saying, I'm pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organization. I will be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That is a tweet from President Trump, Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th and 47th president of these United States. And I want to get some reaction to that from Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. She is the congresswoman from that same great state of Texas, 24th District. Congresswoman BVD, what say you?
No, I agree. I mean, I agree 100% that when you're looking at these groups, they're obviously heavily funded, obviously organized. And this is just not one or two firsts, right? Like in 4th of July, we actually saw a violent and aggressive action in North Texas against an ICE detention center. 14 trans anarchists attacked the facility. They lured officers out into the open, and they fired. Ambush. They opened fired on them with AR-style rifles from 2 firing positions. This is well planned, and they were well outfitted. And the 14 people were all in the same black military-style clothing, armed with fireworks and high-powered AR-style rifles. And when you start looking at these people, they are showing up again and again and again at different riots. These are not peaceful protests. These are violent riots. And Benjamin Hanel's song was one of them. He shot at officers with an AR-style rifle on 4th of July, but he has a multi-year history of participating in these armed riots. And starting back in 2020, there was a riot in Austin, and he pointed a rifle at a police officer. He was arrested. The police did do their job, but guess what? The Soros DA never actually charged or prosecuted him. And so this will actually give the RICO, which I'm the sponsor in the House. We've got Senator Cruz is a sponsor in the Senate, but it actually will give jurisdictional flexibility so that the RICO could actually create a pathway that we can get it out of these Soros place district attorneys who refuse to prosecute these violent left-wing criminals. And so it gives a lot more tools to be able to go after the funders, the organizers, and that's exactly what we need to do. I mean, just this week, right? There was a similar connection between the violent, there's a Dallas-based trans activist group. It's a similar cell operating in Utah. It's called the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City. That's being led by an Iranian trans immigrant who has been heavily involved in socialist and communist recruitment and training in the United States. And they're saying, it may be connected with the Charlie Kirk murder and assassination. And I think these kinds of violent organizations and their funders, we have to go after them, dismantle them, and send these people to jail.
Folks, you heard it right. We're on with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. There is a group of violent transgendered individuals. Can you give us their name again?
It is the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City was one, but there's a similar cell that's been found in Dallas that's been working as well. I mean, again, these are organized, and it's not just onesie-twosie groups. They are organized throughout the country.
Yeah, there's another similar group called the Zizians or the Zizians that killed a Border Patrol agent. They're also trans and kill people. And this is a phenomena, right? This is one I've never heard of violent trans groups that are killing people, but we're witnessing it. We're seeing it. We've seen them attack the police station. We're seeing them commit murder. We're seeing lots of violence coming from this group. And it is bizarre, but it makes sense when you start to think about it, because this has been a largely marginalized group. The communists that we've studied in history, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, they've historically tried to other people into, an us versus them, a lower class versus everybody else type of argument. And this is the latest iteration of that, of, you're in this minority group and everyone else is against you. And that's how radicalization works, Congresswoman.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I was communicating today with a student from Turning Point USA from the University of Texas at Dallas campus. I don't know if you remember this, but last year there was a couple students who had gotten assaulted by a trans. It was a violent trans student. Remember, she got hit with a lock in the head. And the universities have got to start responding to these things, and I think Texas has been really, really strong. They don't allow this stuff to happen. When this happened at the University of Texas Dallas campus, they responded appropriately. They expelled the student. But I mean, make no mistake, these kids, especially the TPUSA kids, they're putting themselves in harm's way. And we have to be able to have conversations with people at these universities. I mean, it's disgusting that you can't have. They want to talk about protecting the First Right Amendments. We need to be able to debate and not be at risk of being shot. And going after the people who are putting these things together where you see the same general trends, you have to have tools that be able to connect the dots. And so often or not, we're treating these as onesie, twosie, lone wolf cases, but they're not. The further we investigate, that we find out that they're connected and that they're being funded by similar groups.
And, Congresswoman, I oftentimes, and perhaps inaccurately or accurately, but I do it anyway, because it's what I believe. I believe that those with a way bigger perch than I, those on television, those in entertainment and in media, are largely the ones pushing this agenda, trying to make it seem as if this is a problem that exists largely or equally on both sides, that somehow this is, not a radical left-wing problem that we have in our country.
Well, of course. And whenever they start saying we all, it's them. And right. It is one-sided. I mean, look at the difference between the George Floyd response and the response to Charlie Kirk's assassination. We weren't burning the streets. We were in prayer. We were singing. We were holding hands. We were praying. We were coming together. That is the response of the right, because it's making that voice even stronger. It's making it more supportive, and it is growing, versus the violent response that we see from the left and the radical left. Some of my colleagues that are here spewing hate, spewing for violence, spewing for more, deaths, and we're seeing it. And I'm hearing it on the floor. We're seeing it at the Capitol. These are people who are elected, who took an oath, and they're completely violating their oath. They're calling for violence, and then they have the gall, when they see the violence actually happen, to sit there and point the blame at the right. And we have had enough. I think, we call, the turning point. This is really a turning point with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You're seeing so many people come together. You are seeing now, twice as many, 45,000 schools have now reached out wanting to have Turning Point USA on their campuses. This is going to be stronger than ever before, because people are sick of it. They are sick of being told, don't believe your lying eyes. They see it for themselves, and when you have other people that are willing to go, truth to power, and that's exactly what this group is doing. It's truth to power. The Democrats, the far left extremists, are really concerned about it, and they are speaking in ridiculous tones and pointing the finger at the right instead of back where it belongs in correcting their own action.
Yeah, really well put, Congresswoman. And quickly, before I let you go, the folks at ABC have let go of Jimmy Kimmel, or taken him off the air indefinitely because of comments he made saying that it's some sort of right-wing shooter, and the right is trying to massage the facts to try and change it into something it's not. Your thoughts?
Look, I think if you have a private organization that is a business, you're playing up to your audience, and they don't want to have hate. They don't want to have division. Finally, they're caught on that does not sell. That's not good for the ratings, and they're responding accordingly. They're refusing to continue that lie and to spew that hatred and to actually rave up violent behavior. Now, I keep hearing, oh, well, it's First Amendment right, First Amendment right. It's the private sector. The government sector is not going after them. It's the private sector saying, we have had enough. This is bad for business. This is bad for ratings. This is bad for our stockholders, and they're doing the right thing. It's about time.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, I want to thank you for being here. Good luck, Godspeed with the Stop Funders Act that you have introduced in the House, the companion bill to what we played the audio of Senator Cruz discussing. This is, I think, a very big deal that's going to make a big difference in America. So thank you for that, and God bless.
God bless you. I appreciate all you do. You have a great night.
You too. Thank you. And amigos, we come back with your thoughts, your calls, your reactions on everything that's going on. This is a real culture war. You've got, people taking to the streets, calling employers, saying, hey, look, this is what your guy is saying. This is what your employees are doing. This is what your students are doing. More and more schools are taking action and trying to hold people accountable for violating their own rules, right? And this is not about free speech. You can have all the free speech you want, but guess what? You don't have it at work. You don't have it when you're a student somewhere. Everybody has a code of conduct that they have to adhere to when they're in someone's employ or in someone's school. And we're seeing some of the consequences of that bad behavior. When we come back, your calls and more.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
Wishing the death on somebody like that, I don't think that's okay. I don't think it should be tolerated.
If we limit one free speech, unfortunately, we limit all free speech.
A whirlwind of emotions is taking over Texas State University after a student is expelled for their actions in this viral video.
My name is Charlie Kirk.
The student can be seen appearing to mock Charlie Kirk's death by grabbing his neck, falling to the floor, then spitting on the ground. This happened during a vigil for Kirk held at the school Monday night. One student, Hayden Allard, spoke with the person just minutes before this happened.
I was like, hey man, I want to get some input of why you feel this mad, why you feel enraged. He just shook his head and he was like, F Charlie Kirk, all my dead homies. He kept saying stuff like that and shaking his head. He's like, you're just going to talk to a brick wall. You're not going to get anything out of me.
Earlier today, Governor Greg Abbott responded to the video on X, calling for the expulsion of the student, saying, quote, this conduct is not accepted in our schools. Expel this student immediately. While Allard and some students I spoke with agree he should be expelled, others say this student also has a right to freedom of speech.
They have a right. They're entitled to, as long as they do not incite violence, not mock.
I think he should not be expelled just for having his opinions.
Ultimately, University President Kelly Dampus did not condone this behavior and expelled the student. In a statement this afternoon, Dampus says in part, I will not tolerate behavior that mocks, trivializes, or promotes violence on our campuses.
That is a report about what's going on in Texas. And these Texas universities, a lot going on there. I find it, it's always an interesting thing because I'm what you would call a free speech absolutist, right? I want you to say things that I don't like, not because I want to hear them, but because I want to say things you don't like. And how could I have that right if you don't have that right? So I'm always in favor of that. But this is, again, a good lesson in the Constitution. The Constitution protects us in the public square. And the public square exists in many places, right? Obviously in public, certain government forums, However, it does not extend to your employer. If your employer says, hey, look, I don't want you saying this or doing that or wearing, it's not school, right? So, I mean, you have free speech in a public school, right? If you want to wear a certain shirt or something like that. And even then, these cases have made their way all the way up to the Supreme Court, the T-shirt cases, all right? Students that want to wear T-shirts that say like Jesus loves you or something like that. Those are cases that have made their way up there. And again, if this guy has a claim, go right ahead. I would just argue if you sign a code of conduct to become a student somewhere and you say, I agree to behave by these rules, then there you have it, right? And I think that's what a lot of students do when they are enrolled in universities. They're agreeing to be a part of the university and to make sure that they're going to follow the rules that the university prescribes. You don't like them, don't go to that school. So that's A. B, what kind of I don't want to use any derogatory terms here, but what kind of ding dong are you to think that this is going to be good for you, right? And I get it. These are young kids in school trying to express their dissent, right? I get that, but you have to be smart about things, and ultimately, for me, I think, am I embarrassing my family? Am I going to make my dad look bad? Am I going to make my mom look bad? Am I going to make my people, right? If I do something bad, I think, oh, that's how all the Puerto Ricans are. I've lived my whole life like this. I've never wanted to be the source of ire, the whatever. Last thing I want somebody to do is be like, oh, yeah, that's Juan Valdez's son, and oh boy, not what I wanted. So I tried to make sure I behaved myself a certain way, speak a certain way. Didn't want to get caught on these streets, sounding like I was from the gutter, and that was just me and how I was brought up. But I think that's good advice for everybody, right? I would suspect. Anyway, I see the calls are lining up. I'm going to get to you guys momentarily. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And lots going on this evening. I want to go to the phones, 833-482-5337. Let's go to our buddy Paul, giving us a call from Boise, Idaho. Paul, go for it, my man.
Thanks for taking my call.
Yes,
that
sir.
lynching and the way things are going, I would not be surprised if it was a setup, that they murdered the guy and they made it look like the white boys did it. It strikes me that way. I'm not saying it would happen, but it just strikes me that way. The left is playing some games, and that's a bad game.
Listen, I don't know anything about that case just yet. I just heard the clip of it momentarily, and I was reading about it. Horrible thing, right? A 21-year-old dead is a horrible thing, and the family's claiming that the police told him that he was found in the dorm. The police are claiming the family's mistaken. We found him where we found him, and we don't see any evidence of foul play. There's a independent autopsy coming into that case. I'm going to get into that a little bit more in the next segment because it deserves a little bit of time, and we've got to figure out what's what. And it really is seemingly a bizarre case. I'm told that the attorney on the case may be Benjamin Crump, which he has a pretty bad track record. It's not like he wins cases and gets justice. It's more like he muddies waters and creates problems where they don't exist. But definitely going to look into that. Paul, I appreciate the call. And, one of those things that always sticks with me, in times like this is sometimes you just got to wait for the facts because, things change, right? People get initial stories, people put things out, and the next thing you know, who remembers, raise your hand if you remember, the case of, man, I'm forgetting his name. Shoot, the kid with the gun in, I'm dying over here. Anyway, I'm going to have to leave you hanging. You probably know what I'm talking about, and I don't remember what I'm talking about. But they said he brought the gun across state lines. Turned out he was always there. The gun was always there. The whole thing was a hoax. Anyway, Kyle Rittenhouse. I'll be right back. Rich Valdes. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of our program. It's Hump Day. This is another hour for you. We are live. We are national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And I wanted to get into a bunch of things. I mean, freedom of speech is constantly the conversation of the day lately. And we're going to get into a little bit of that because obviously everybody's claiming it's free speech. I can paint over the Charlie Kirk mural. It's free speech. I can say go drop dead. It's free speech. I could do all these different things. But people forget that, you know, you have a way of behaving in certain places where you give up that right in many ways, right? If you're in your employer, right, and you want to go to work and you work for a private company, and do whatever you do in this private company. They may allow certain things, but they may also have a code of conduct that they have where they don't want certain things. And you have to abide by that. You can't sue them because you're not allowed to come to work saying, you know, I wore my FJB shirt, right? The F Joe Biden shirt. And I got in trouble at work. Yeah, guess what? In some places you can't use that. And they're well within their right to say you can't use that, right? Because you're not working in the public square per se, and this was a big deal with during Colin Kaepernick, right? People were saying, well, it's his free speech, but in reality, I mean, he didn't necessarily have free speech. He was working for the NFL. Now, the NFL didn't tell him he couldn't do that, so he was clearly within the confines of what the NFL allowed, but not to just assume that you could do whatever you want or take a knee or do whatever, you know, you feel like doing, that's not necessarily the case. Your company's got to be on board with that, right? So I use my free speech on this radio, not because I'm entitled to it because of the Constitution, but because my employer allows me to do that. The day that they don't, it's the day I don't show up. We'll have a guest host, a couple of bests of, and then you'll read an article about me about he's not here anymore. Right, because I don't think I could work in an environment like that. But that's why I give kudos to the Westwood One radio network. They've never, ever tried to silence me. Cumulus Media never tried to silence me. And they enjoy the rigorous debate. And that's why I always invite people that disagree with me on the show. I've invited Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, all out crazy. I've invited her on this show. I tried to invite her on my old show. She ran away from me. That's a true story. You could look it up. Sometimes people don't want to have a conversation with you. And I applaud everybody that had conversations with Charlie Kirk because he was a genuine guy. He told you what he thought. He gave you a chance to say what you were going to say. He didn't shout you down. At times these debates were, you know, they're debates, so they become contentious, but always respectful. And his heart was always in the right place. Anyway. So we're going to get into some of that in this hour, this upcoming hour. We're also going to talk about rates, right? The Fed finally gave in. They cut rates a little bit today. Jerome Powell, I guess, to save face so he doesn't look like he's trying to sabotage America, decided I am going to cut rates, but clearly he didn't cut what was needed. My opinion, a full point or 75 basis points, but no, a quarter point I think is what we ended up getting. We're going to talk about that with former White House economist Steve Moore, but we'll do that in a little bit. First, I want to talk about a quick update on New York City. I mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. Dominican Americans from the Latino community in New York City rallying around Curtis Sliwa today. Now, a little bit of insight. When I was growing up, in my teenage years and whatnot, big merengue band called Oro Solido, right? Lead singer Raul Acosta. And they made a bunch of hits. They toured the world. They had global hits. Matter of fact, today, I was at lunch today at a Colombian restaurant, and I heard 3 Oro Solido songs while I was at lunch just today. They had just El Baile del Beeper. Ooh, I don't know if you heard that one. They're all Spanish songs, but great, great songs, very fun party songs. And the lead singer of Oro Solido, a Dominican-American himself, getting behind the Curtis Sliwa campaign today. A huge endorsement for Curtis Sliwa for mayor of the city of New York. Dominicans in Washington Heights and the Bronx, the Dominican-American Republican Club endorsing Curtis Sliwa today. So Curtis Sliwa picking up a lot of momentum as we get, I think, 50 days, right? 50 days till Election Day. So keeping you posted on everything that's happening there. Also, there was another thing. Jimmy Kimmel was asked to stop coming to work indefinitely because his employer said that he'd shared information that they felt wasn't helpful. Right? There goes his free speech at work. Perfect example. Jimmy Kimmel says that, the case he made, let me just give you the story here. All right, Jimmy Kimmel getting pulled off because he made comments that the network said were offensive and insensitive at a critical time in our national political discourse. And this is what we're seeing in a lot of places. Nexstar said, stressing its desire to move towards the resumption of respectful, constructive dialogue. Now, listen, I don't want anybody to lose their job. I really don't. But I am going to say, I'm hired in this job to inform and entertain, right? I give you the daily scoop, what's going on in America at night. I tell you what's happening. I happen to, crack a joke every now and again because that's my personality. And I give you my analysis as who I am, conservative Hispanic from New York. And it's a little bit of a different take than you might get on some other radio shows. That's my gig. However, Jimmy Kimmel is a professional comedian, and he gets paid, I don't know, a gazillion times more than I do. And people are tuning into these late night programs, in my opinion, to do what Jay Leno once did, to do what Johnny Carson once did. These guys were legendary. When they made jokes about politics, you didn't even know their politics, right? They just made jokes about the politics of the day to give you, before you go to bed, a couple of jokes on what was going on, try to bring you an entertaining interview of some sort with their guest, maybe a musical guest, a little bit of a stand-up routine, and keep it moving. It was a lighthearted way to end every evening. And in recent years, that's not the case. Stephen Colbert, he was great with the political satire on Comedy Central. I really never saw much of his show as he had The Late Show. But I can tell you that, again, he also landed himself in some grief because there's a number of clips out there, if you just look for Stephen Colbert, Late Show, or even for Jimmy Kimmel. These guys kind of gave up on the funny thing and just became, like competitors of Mark Levin, right? Mark Levin is a former government lawyer that served in the Reagan administration. He is funny, but he's a very serious guy. He's a constitutional scholar. He's chief of staff at the Department of Justice. He knows what's going on. He's a wonk, right? He knows policy. He's a very smart guy, and he gets very passionate about this stuff. So when Mark gets on the mic and he starts yelling, it's the left and it's the media, and that is who he truly is. That's not Jimmy Kimmel, but yet it's seemingly they get on there and they start riffing about everything that's going on, and it kills me because people listen to Mark Levin to hear exactly what he's talking about. They want to hear him riffing on the news of the day. I don't know anybody who tunes into Jimmy Kimmel hoping that this comedian is going to give them their political analysis, let alone, kind of chart the course for the rest of their political lives, right? I want to hear, what he thinks about, the funny things in life, why we watch late night TV, which is why we try to make this show a little bit lighter. And again, occasionally the news doesn't allow that because the news is kind of heavy sometimes. But the point is, I understand that the news can be heavy, and Jimmy Kimmel trying to talk about Charlie Kirk's assassination. It's a heavy topic. But instead of trying to do it delicately, he turns around and tries to say it's a cover-up, that the right is trying to malign the left to try and make the assassin look like something that they already know that he is, a right-winger, which clearly seems to me he's not, right? There's evidence of the contrary. So, I mean, this is clearly just you're trying to get people to believe. Don't believe your lying eyes. You know, I'm really 7 feet tall and blonde with hair like Thor. I mean, you know, when you're looking at me, you're going to realize, no, sir, you're not. you're 5'8" and bald. So that's what happened to Jimmy Kimmel. I think he just went a step too far. And, you know, pobrecito, I wish him the best. I really do. It's unfortunate that that's where we are, where everybody wants to just trash the other side, even when it's not their gig per se. So maybe he'll get picked up by CNN. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but we'll see how it goes for him, and I'll keep you up to speed on that. And there was something else. Oh, my gosh. Breaking news that I talked about a little while ago, and I will reiterate. 3 cops killed by a shooter that opened fire when they responded to a call. 2 other cops in critical condition. This happened in York, Pennsylvania. And really just unfortunate. And, of course, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, he is in Great Britain, President Trump in England, having a spot of tea with the King and the Queen over in, was that Kensington or Buckingham Palace? And I was going to do the whole monologue in my British, but I'm not going to do it all in my British. But I can't help but imagine that some of them are saying, oh, these Yankees from across the pond, I can't wait till they go back home, I tell you. I'm pretty sure that there's a bunch of them that you can't stand Americans, but they seem to give them a very, very gracious welcome. So kudos to El Trompito hanging out over there. And, of course, I want to talk about Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell making a move today, I guess, to save face so that people don't think he's sabotaging our economy. That's my belief. My personal belief is that Chairman Powell is doing everything he can to make sure that rates stay high so that other parts of our balance sheet, if you will, soften up. And his goal is to make things look bad, to actually say, well, you know, yeah, I guess that Trump economy wasn't that good after all. And this is the goal. And I got to tell you, anybody who's rooting against America because they want to see Trump fail is going to see America fail. And that's got to be the dumbest philosophy I've ever heard. So I wish we would have seen 75 basis points or, a whole full 100 basis points. But we got a quarter, and I want to get the scoop on what that's going to look like moving forward from former White House economist serving in both the Reagan administration and the first Trump administration. Steve Moore joins us straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
While the unemployment rate remains low, it has edged up. Job gains have slowed, and downside risks to employment have risen. At the same time, inflation has risen recently and remains somewhat elevated. In support of our goals and in light of the shift in the balance of risks, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a 0.25 percentage point. We also decided to continue to reduce our securities holdings. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that growth of economic activity has moderated. GDP rose at a pace of around 1.5% in the first half of the year, down from 2.5% last year. The moderation in growth largely reflects a slowdown in consumer spending. In contrast, business investment in equipment and intangibles has picked up from last year's pace. Activity in the housing sector remains weak. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects GDP to rise 1.6% this year and 1.8% next year.
Activity in the housing market remains weak. Is this guy a rocket scientist or what? Unbelievable. If you got rates high, obviously you are slowing things down in the housing market, let alone everything else. Isn't the reason that we raise interest rates to shrink the economy a little bit, to slow it down as a way to bring down inflation? I for the life of me, I think this guy is one of the biggest morons out there, but perhaps I'm being too harsh. So I want to bring in one of the pros. He is former Council of Economic Advisors in the White House, served President Reagan as well. He is the head of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. I like to call him Steve Moore. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, Rich. Good to be with you.
Steve Moore, what's going on with your buddy Jerome Powell over here?
So I think I agree with a lot of what you just said. I think Jerome Powell is one of the most overrated Fed chairman we've had. For those who don't follow this that closely, the Fed, of course, controls the supply of money that's pumped into the economy or taken out of the economy. So it's a powerful position. But remember, Jerome Powell is the chairman of the Fed who gave us the highest inflation rate since Jimmy Carter was in office. Remember when we had, do you remember, Rich, when we had the 9% inflation in Biden's first year? That's because Jerome Powell, who's supposed to, the number one job of the Federal Reserve Board is to control inflation and keep the dollar strong and stable. But he did just the opposite of that. And then he cut interest rates. I mean, what was really strange is that he cut interest rates a few months before the election of 2024. Gee, do you think he might have been trying to provide a little help for Kamala Harris there when inflation was still pretty high? And so throughout this year, inflation has been, for the most part, pretty low, and yet he hasn't, it's not until just today has he cut interest rates. So I think he's all over the map. I totally disagree with his analysis of the economy. The economy, we passed the big, beautiful tax bill. We have a really good situation right now. The stock market is strong. We've got record production of oil and gas in this country. We're producing more than ever before. We still have 7 million more jobs than people looking for jobs. So, and by the way, incomes are up over the first 6 months of the Trump presidency. So why is he being so somber about the economy? 1.6% growth, that's pathetic. We can grow much faster than that. We will grow much faster than that. And I think we've got a pretty healthy economy, frankly.
Now, Steve Moore, he mentioned how GDP was lower this go-round than it was last year at this time, which I find interesting with the amount of economic activity that I can see.
Right.
Why is that the case?
Because it isn't. I don't know. It is true. The first quarter, well, the first quarter of the year was weak, but, for the first part of the first quarter, Joe Biden was still president. It wasn't until the end of January that Trump came in. It takes maybe a little while for the new president's new policies to take shape. The second quarter of the year, we had 3.3% growth, which is a lot high. That's, if I can do the math there, that's double the 1.6% he's talking about. Many of the forecasts by his own Federal Reserve say we're looking at 2 to 3% growth.
Unbelievable. Steve, stick with me. We're going to come right back because I want to talk about this. I also want to talk about, are Americans really socialists? Is capitalism falling by the wayside? CNN had some report on that, and I want to get your take on that. Folks, we're coming right back with Steve Moore, former White House economist. He's with the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, and he's coming right back with us. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Rich Valdes, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
I'm not really surprised that Kathy Hochul decided to, in fact, endorse R.M. Mamdani, because the fact is, socialism is not a four-letter word in Democratic primaries, not among Democratic voters. It's a five-letter word in the minds of a lot of Democrats, that five-letter word being great. Look at this. Net popularity of socialism among Democrats. You go back to 2010, it was plus 7 points. Look how high it is now, up like a rocket, up to plus 36 points. That's a jump of nearly 30 points on the net popularity scale. among Democrats in just 15 years. And I was looking at the polling from New York City, and what you see is the clear plurality of New York City Democrats think the idea of having a socialist mayor is a good idea, matching what we see nationally. The bottom line is socialism isn't a dirty word among Democrats at this particular point. It's actually a word that, when attached, Democrats seem to like it.
That's a huge jump, and that's not that long ago, let me add.
No.
What about capitalism?
Yeah, okay, so if all of a sudden socialism is now a 5-letter word, great. What I would say is capitalism in the mind of Democrats is a 3-letter word, bad. What are we talking about? Net popularity of socialism among Democrats. Look at this trend. It was plus 8 points in 2010 on the positive side of the ledger. Look at where we are in 2025. Down. Falling through the floor at minus 13 points. That's a drop of over 20 points in just 15 years. So we see the exact opposite trend that we see at socialism, which is up, up and away. What we see with capitalism is down, down, down through the floor.
Okay, we're talking about Democrats here. What about if you look at the larger population, Harry? Is it the same type of thing?
This is where the danger is for Democrats, because if socialism plays in Democratic primaries, it does not play in the general electorate. What do we see going on here? Net popularity among all adults. Capitalism is on the positive side of the ledger at plus 12 points. Socialism way, way, way underwater at minus 18 points. So that's capitalism running away by 30 points over socialism. That is why Republicans are thanking their lucky stars if Mamdani, in fact, wins the general election, because they feel like they can play off of him, because socialism may play in New York City among Democrats, but among the general electorate, Donald Trump and the Republicans are saying, hey, look at this socialist mayor in New York City. This is what we're dealing with. So again, something may play in Democratic primaries. It may play in the very Democratic city of New York. But among the general electorate, Republicans are salivating at the idea that they can run against a Democratic socialist being the mayor of New York City.
That's Harry Enton on CNN, and that lets the cat out of the bag, right? It lets you wonder why so many people are kind of rooting for Mamdani, and anybody but Mamdani. But the reality is Mamdani, Cuomo, and Adams, these guys have very little daylight in between them on policy differences. They really just aren't that different. Neither was Bill de Blasio, to be frank. And the only one that provides any difference here, any contrast, any sanity is Curtis Sliwa. And I think we're going to see a lot of surprises there. Like I said, I just came from New York, and Dominicans in Washington Heights rallying for Curtis Sliwa, huge platinum recording artists coming out to support him. But the conversation here is about capitalism. And Jerome Powell seems to not really like capitalism either, deciding only to lower the rate from the Fed by 25 basis points. And I'm wondering, with our guest, Steve Moore from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, former White House economist, both for Ronald Reagan and for President Trump, Steve Moore, is 25 basis points going to cut it?
Well, I don't think it's going to make that huge difference. You know, there's a real mystique about the Fed that somehow Jerome Powell is, like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, and all he has to do is push a button or pull a lever, and the economy is going to, grow faster. And that's a mythology. The Fed's job is to keep the dollar strong and stable, so we retain the dollar as the world reserve currency, and so that we don't have runaway inflation like we did under Jerome Powell a few years ago. But if I may, Rich, I would like to address this issue of why it is that socialism among young people seems to be in vogue. And first of all, I was fortunate enough, and I've been very fortunate in my life, and I got to know Milton Friedman, probably the greatest economist of the last 100 years.
I just want to make a tidbit.
I know. Is that cool or what?
That is very cool. You know who I talked to once for about 7 or 8 minutes? Thomas Sowell.
It's cool. I love both of those. And Tom Sowell,
legends. Both of them are legends.
Still alive, and Milton Friedman died. But Milton Friedman said many, many wise things. But one of the things he said towards the end of his life is that the enduring lesson of the 20th century is that communism and socialism are a failure, and free market capitalism is a success. And he was right. That was the enduring, and should have been the enduring lesson of the 20th century. And incidentally, I don't like the term capitalism. I call it free enterprise, for a free market economy, exactly. And so it is very troubling. Where did these crazy ideas come from? I think that the kids they have been indoctrinated in the schools with the idea that somehow socialism. I mean, I would like these young kids. I really would, Rich. If they think socialism is so great, let's send them to Caracas, Venezuela, or let's send them to Cuba, or let's send them to North Korea, or some of these places that have socialism, and see how they like it.
Listen, if you're going to Venezuela, do not go on a drug boat because Trump might blow it up, and it's not going to be a good look. But you're right, Steve Moore, and this is interesting, and I love Harry Enton because he gives you good analysis on these things. And he says that in the general election, most Americans, they're not going for this stuff, right? It's really kind of a niche palette, I'm going to say, right? There's only a select few people that have an appetite for socialism. Why does it have such an impact? Why is Bernie and AOC and Mamdani seemingly so popular?
Well, I think a lot of young people think it's fair. Share the wealth. We should all share in what everyone has, and yet you can only have goods and services and food to eat and the things that you want if you work for them. It's that simple. Somebody has to produce them, right? And the idea that we just give things away, that doesn't work very well. It doesn't work anywhere it's ever been tried. I don't quite understand. Well, the place where it's very popular is on university campuses. So these professors who've never actually worked in the free enterprise system or actually worked to start a business think that, socialism is such a wonderful thing because they live under a socialist system called the university culture. We've got to get people working. We've got to get them starting businesses. We are the most powerful nation in the world, the richest country in the history of the world, because we have free enterprise.
Amen to that. And, Steve Moore, I'm with you on that. And I think that this is part of the problem that we're having, overall, right? Whether it's the reaction to the Kirk assassination, which to me is a larger problem, right? Of people kind of lacking humanity, being overly volatile and vile towards the people they disagree with. Is coming from the academy, right? Academia really just driving this into people because but for college kids, I can't find anybody that's like, we should cheer on dead people. Really, I don't see it. You don't even see rival gangs do that in the hood, right? They do what they do, and they just kind of look the other way. They don't sit there and celebrate it.
Right, and what's really scary about what's going on in university campuses is that the one place in the world you would think you would have free expression and freedom of speech and the freedom to voice your opinion would be on university campuses. But of course, they have closed their mind to anyone who has an opinion different than theirs, and they have these safe zones. They have speech codes. You can't say certain words. That's such a violation of our First Amendment rights of free speech, and we have to reassert our power over these schools and make sure that they're not indoctrinating our kids with anti-American ideals. The free enterprise system, freedom and capitalism and democracy, they all go together.
Yeah. Now, Steve Moore, I want to posit a question to you, or at least a political theory of mine. And if I'm wrong and you think I'm totally off, please tell me. But I believe that Jerome Powell is a sellout. I believe that the way you indicated he was trying to help Kamala Harris last time around, I believe he's been actively trying to hurt Trump by softening this economy, by not moving interest rates. And I feel like he got to a point today, not because of pressure from Trump, but because I think he felt like if I don't make a move now, people will suspect something. So I'm going to make a move, but it's going to be minimal. So I can go, look.
He had no other choice. Yeah.
And I feel like he likely could have easily done 100 basis points and nobody would have batted an eye. Is that crazy for me to think that way?
Well, look, I don't want people to think, again, that somehow if the Fed lowers interest rates, that somehow that makes the economy healthy. I think we have a healthy economy. I think Trump's doing the right things
I agree,
with lower
it's healthy,
taxes.
but let me ask you this, Steve. You don't think that, I can tell you I'm going to go out and buy a piece of property as soon as interest rates go down. And I think there's a lot of people like me, but I just don't want to get into a 7% mortgage. And I'm trying to find that sweet spot where I can get a 5% mortgage and hopefully grab the property before it skyrockets because mortgage rates went down. I crazy?
Well, of course we want lower mortgage rates. But what happened back last year do you know what happened to mortgage rates after they cut the short-term rates? The mortgage rates went up. What I'm trying to tell you and your listeners is the Fed does not control the long-term interest rates. The market does. It's the market for capital. And if you put too much money into the economy, if you just keep flushing money into the economy, then what's going to happen to inflation? It's going to go up. So I worry that if we cut the rates too much, it's going to have a negative effect. I lived through the 1970s. I know a lot of your listeners did too. Well, that's the thing. It's a hard thing to know. We'll see how the stock market likes the lower rates, and we'll see what happens to mortgage rates. But you're quite right. We need lower mortgage rates. But you know what? I'll maybe end with this. I want Washington to cut something, but I'm not so sure I want them to cut the interest rates. I want them to cut government spending, which is out of control, leading to these massive debts, which is the biggest problem we have in Washington. And I bet almost everybody listening to your show agrees with that.
Yeah, 100%. You're a politician in your own right. Steve Moore from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Tell everybody how they can get your amazing daily newsletter.
Well, thank you, Rich, and it's free. It's called the Hotline, and just go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up for free. It costs nothing, but you will be the smartest person in the room if you get it, and if you like it, we'll continue to send it to you. If you don't, you can just unsubscribe. But I think you'll like it, and you can't beat the price because it's absolutely free.
I use it. I read it. It's good stuff. It's like show prep for a lot of things, economics and other things too. They cover a lot there. Steve Moore, thank you for your intellect and your time and your analysis. Godspeed, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a great night.
Bet. You too. I appreciate it. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions to everything going on straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
Breaking news out of York County, Pennsylvania. Just moments ago, state police confirmed that 3 police officers are dead. 2 others are in critical condition, all after being shot. Police shot and killed the gunman.
Police shot and killed the gunman. And again, that's some news that came out about an hour ago, I think, maybe a little more than an hour ago. That when I heard it, it was terrible then, and it's ongoing. It's still terrible. 3 officers dead, 2 officers in critical but stable condition, and the gunman was shot by police. I want to go to your calls. Let's go to Pennsylvania. I want to talk to Bill. Bill's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Bill, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Well, I was going to ask you, I don't know, you have heard about the shooting near Philadelphia, and believe me, I despise that city. I wish
That's
it
the
wasn't
city of
even
brotherly love.
No, yeah, right. I've been there many times, and I'm telling you something, Rich. I had nothing but a bad time. I'm going to tell you how nasty this city is. This was years ago. They did it to my father at the time, and they did it to me. They sent us parking tickets. All right, Rich. They sent us parking tickets
in the mail.
And we weren't even there at the time. You know, they had our plate number, so obviously they went through Harrisburg. They grabbed idiots like us. They grabbed our plate number and try to collect money. I threw mine in the garbage. But anyways, Rich, I'm trying to talk to these nuts that are in KDKA, on KDKA. They're liberal, and I said I try to tell them tonight, when you if you are a mayor in this country, any city, New York, wherever, bug tussle, these cops need they don't need defunded. You need to send an army to wherever the heck they have to go.
Listen, brother, I'm with you. I think that we need to make sure the cops are getting the funding that they need, hiring as many cops as they need so that there's not a lot of overtime stress. And the last thing that you need to do is defund the police, especially in high crime areas like you're talking about, Philadelphia and the surrounding areas. What they need is police on the streets, boots on the ground. And President Trump going to Memphis yesterday. Well, again, he announced that they've been in Memphis for several months, but that they're sending additional aid to Memphis. And again, I think this is a great thing. The governor, the Republican governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee, was at the White House yesterday making an announcement of this plan that he's been working on with President Trump. And many residents, just like you, saying, hey, look, we need an army here to take care of things. And I've got some audio clips from that. Maybe we'll get into that in a little bit. But really welcomed. It seems like the residents have welcomed the police and the National Guard and any federal resources that the president has sent to any high crime area. Because guess what? Rocket science again. People don't want to live in crime, irrespective of their race. And I think it's racist to suggest that because somebody might be a minority that they somehow want to live in a crime-ridden area. I think that's offensive. I think it's racist. And the Democrats aren't doing themselves any favor talking like that. Bill, thanks for your call, brother. Shout out to KDKA in the building. And I'm going to take a pause right here. We're going to come right back. We got a bunch of calls. We're going to get to them straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Let's go over here to Globe, Arizona, KRVN. Check in with Paul. Go right ahead, Paul.
Hey, I want to thank you, Rich, for having that lady on from Texas. She's brilliant, and she did a great job of stating the problem. But, you can restate the problem indefinitely, but until you start addressing how to solve it, it will never be solved. And before you can solve it, you have to outline the magnitude of the problem. Our school system, our universities are mass producing left-wing radicals. Our
100% right. And we've been talking about that. President Trump has taken many steps, I think, more than any other president I've seen. He's gotten sued by every college that he froze funding on because he tried to stop this radicalization. And but you're right. This is how it is. And honestly, people have to vote with their feet. I worked in higher ed for a little while, and my first kid, right, she's 24 now. She would tell you, my parents would disown me if I didn't go to college. My little one, I tell her, look, I want you to go to college. She wants to be a lawyer, so you have to go to college. But if you don't need college for the career that you want to get into, let me tell you, don't go. Figure out another way, because right now it might be more harm than it's worth because they're so radical. Really good point, Paul. I appreciate it. Shout out to KRVN. We continue. Where do I want to go? Excuse me. Let's go to John, Reno, Nevada, streaming the show, richvaldes.com. John, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich.
Hey.
I want to talk about Kash Patel.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with Kash Patel. I think he's doing a great job. I think Cory Booker, once again, is being a media hog. He likes to run to the cameras. He had no concerns about Epstein when it was Clinton hanging out with him. He's trying to say Kash Patel lied about the Utah investigation. There was no lies. This is a mountain out of a molehill.
Right. No, I agree with you. And it was a pretty quick resolution to it, right? A day and a half, and boom, they've already got the suspect. So, John, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. And you're right. I think Kash is doing a great job. Cory Booker, I think, is just trying to position himself to run for president yet again. Anyway, amigos, I see we've got calls from Ohio, South Carolina, New Mexico, and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome back for another hour of live programming. We are live, we are national, and our phone number, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes, and plenty going on tonight. President Trump, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, El Trompito, El Presidente. He is in the United Kingdom on a state visit to Buckingham Palace. He's meeting with, or Kensington Palace, I forget which palace he was at, but he was there, first president to ever go there. And that was really cool. That was part of the remarks. We'll play you some of those remarks in a little bit. But each of the people there giving a toast, each of the dignitaries, and I think President Trump's remarks were just great. They were so not just so American, but they were so New York, and I've always had an appreciation for that because when you're from New York, even people in New York don't like the New York accent or sometimes that New York bravado, and I love that Trump doesn't leave it at home. He comes through. He's wherever he is. He's letting them know where he's coming from. And I love that. And I love that he's making these inroads with so many countries. And again, we've always been a great ally with England. That's not an inroad that needs to be made. But I think he's improved the relationship between his White House and the Crown over there. So, we're at a time where things are ticking, tricky, and it's like a ticking time bomb, right? It's like a powder keg. I say that I saw a video the other day. And this guy's got a red beard, young man, young man like my age, younger, maybe 30-something, and maybe 40, early 40s. And he's talking about his service in Afghanistan, how he lost guys in Afghanistan, but he's British. And he I guess was part of a coalition force fighting over there. And he was on a tear because he feels like they're losing England. Mainly to crime that was being committed by a lot of immigrants that have recently come to England. And, the media portrays this as racism sometimes and whatnot, but there's a genuine reality that there have been these upticks in crime where they've taken in immigrants from, refugees, whatever they're called, from certain parts of the world. Some of them from North African countries, others from Middle Eastern countries, some from South Asian countries, and the crimes vary, right? Some of them are knife attacks, some of them are sexual assaults on minors, and different politicians and activists in the UK have been bringing this to the attention of the public, and instead of attacking the problem, they're trying to attack the messenger by passing stricter and stricter rules against the free speech that doesn't exist in the UK. That's why you've got police locking people up for praying outside of abortion clinics, people for making comments online and getting arrested by the police. The bubbies, as they're known. And it's really, again, as an American, where we get to say all sorts of things. We get to criticize things. We can do them respectfully, and some do disrespectfully in the public square and in other places. It's always remarkable to me that there are places in this world, many. In fact, the United States is the only place that has a constitutional protection the way we have it, with all of the different amendments that we have. And that gives us this protection, and again, the right to protect ourselves and our property, and against the government and against intruders and whatnot with our Second Amendment. And it's just always when I hear these stories and I see that Europe is just going down this road where they want to police people's speech, it's scary. And that's not what we're seeing in the U.S., right? What we're seeing in the U.S. is people saying, look, let's be decent people here. And if you're going to go to this school, you have to behave this way. If you don't want to do it, you leave, right? And the same thing happened on the other side. Jordan Peterson, he was a professor in Canada. And as a professor in Canada, they told him, you got to acknowledge the students' pronouns. And he said, no, I'm not going to allow you to police my thoughts or my speech. That's not how this works. I have academic freedom. I'm a professor here. I'm a tenured professor. And no, thank you. Well, he got into a world of hurt over there. And guess what? Best thing that ever happened to the guy. He makes money hand over fist. He's got an amazing platform. He's written some remarkable books. And people want to hear what he has to say. And they go by droves. I mean, I've tried to get him on the show a number of times. Hard to get, but very, very busy. And why? Because the best thing he did was get out of the classroom. Right, so it was the loss for the university he worked with, and a gain for the rest of the world. So, again, the point is, I think we need to let speech be free. Free speech needs to be free. We need to encourage people to be moral and to be righteous and be prepared for those that are neither. Anyway, that's that. I also want to share some thoughts about, about keeping yourself safe when it comes to your digital assets, right? Device privacy, identity protection, protecting your family, all of your personal data. What happens if it gets compromised, right? There was a data breach that affected over 4 million people, and there are partners out there, right? I've partnered with a company to make sure that my stuff is protected, and I recommend that you do it too. WebRoot Total Protection. WebRoot. WebRoot is an all-in-one privacy and identity protection service that can help you safe, and it just makes sure that your data is not even compromised. WebRoot Total Protection. It allows for identity protection for up to 10 identities, so that's you and your family, up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement. That's a big deal in case you do get had. And 24/7 customer service based here in the U.S., and they even give you an elder fraud hotline because, so many of the people that are being affected by this are our senior citizens. They even give you identity and dark web monitoring. The threats are growing faster than we can keep up with them, and that's why you need this. WebRoot's coverage it also includes antivirus protection, VPN, and cloud backup. So, you want to live a better digital life, especially in the wake of these continued data breaches? Go to the website. You're going to get 50% off WebRoot Total Protection or WebRoot Essentials when you go to webroot.com/rich. I'll give it to you again. 50% off. Go to WebRoot, WEBROOT, webroot.com/rich.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
For hate speech, is that, a lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech. Should probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC. Well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right? Your company paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech. So maybe they'll have to go after you.
That's President Trump doing what only President Trump can do, giving the media right back the sharp questions that they give him. He gives them sharp answers. Fool around and find out for sure. And this is reminiscent of what's happening all across the country. You got Governor Gavin Newsom calling for civility, but he goes ahead and taunts people and tells them, F around and find out. This is rhetoric that's escalating. I don't think he's doing anything to lower it, to cool the temperature, to make things better. And I want to get the reaction of a Californian, right? Don Wagner. He's the supervisor of Orange County, former California State Assembly member, and former mayor of Irvine, California. Don Wagner, welcome, sir.
Rich, a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. And talk to me a little bit about this because, President Trump, again, getting into a little bit of a jousting match there with the media over free speech. Gavin Newsom's got his own rhetoric that's going in a bunch of different directions. And Prop 50, redistricting, that's still out there. What's going on? Help us make sense of it.
Well, it's hard to make sense of other than you need to realize that Gavin Newsom is running for president of the United States. And please, America, never let that happen. You do not want to see for the United States what Gavin and his Democrats have done to California. Proposition 50 is out there. They are gerrymandering the state if the people vote for it. And really, it comes down to a question of Trump versus Gavin Newsom. And in California, unfortunately, we've drunk the Kool-Aid with Gavin Newsom. I don't know why. The Golden State is tarnished. We don't have any real successes to show for it under Newsom's leadership. And I was up in the legislature for a long time, and Gavin Newsom, as a county supervisor, made me the focal point of fighting against the nonsense that they were trying to do with COVID and the shutdowns. And, you talk, fool around and find out. Well, we've found out in California that fooling around with the Democrats have not left us in a better position.
Don Wagner, this is something that I find really interesting because California is like, honestly, to me, I'm an outsider. I feel like it's another planet. I talk to guys like you that got their head on straight, but I feel like, you guys are the aliens there, right? Everybody else seems to be crazy out of their mind. And again, this is the home of Reagan. How did that happen?
Well, it happened sort of like they said, I think it was Hemingway in The Sun Also Rises. A guy goes bankrupt. How did it happen? Well, slowly at first and then all of a sudden. And we hit a tipping point. We got to the point where the Democrats were a supermajority in the state legislature, and they could do anything. They could put any crazy idea on the ballot. They could do anything they wanted with respect to legislation because there was simply nobody to stop them. When I was in the legislature, one of the former speakers of the assembly came to me and said, Don, we need your party to be more functional because if we don't have that counter vote, you empower all the crazies. All the crazies are running things. And we need to fix that here in California. We've got a couple of good candidates running for governor. I'm running for California Secretary of State because our election integrity is just appalling in this state. And we need those folks to fix it. It got bad because we have a supermajority of Democrats, and that empowers the craziest ideas on the left. There's no pushback.
Talk to us about some of those ideas, because every now and again I talk about them here. And I remember earlier this year, or maybe it was last year, but there was a proposition that you guys had available for vote where they were saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make the penalty on certain crimes like rape and things like that, stiffer. And it was the biggest fight on the planet. They were like, no, we're going to protect the pedophiles. We're not doing that. What is going on?
Well, okay, so when I was in the state legislature, there was a rule. It was not an unstated rule. It was not an unwritten rule. It was an acknowledged rule. There was simply no bill that would go through the public safety, and safety really belongs in quotes there, the Public Safety Committee, that would pass if it would increase a penalty, create a new penalty, or keep somebody in jail longer than they otherwise would be. Those were dead on arrival in the state of California. And what you ended up seeing were bills and resolutions and laws that ended up saying that, okay, you can steal less than $1,000. You can do a smash and grab for less than $1,000. And we're not going to treat that as a serious felony. We're not going to treat that as anything but a misdemeanor, at which point it's a slap on the wrist, you get out. Now, my wife is a Superior Court judge, had a criminal calendar. The judges hate that, but their hands are tied because of the legislature. Finally, the public got fed up. And in our last election cycle, we passed Proposition 36 to crank down on some of that. But the Democrats still have not completely gotten the message.
You know who else got fed up? Target, CVS. They've been closing stores left and right in California.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How is that good?
They are.
You're losing jobs and you're losing access to stuff.
I was at an event, a political event this evening. One of the candidates for governor on the other side of the aisle, but at least gets it a little bit, was talking about how he went to a CVS and, you know, the top shelf liquor such as they have at CVS is, or used to be, under lock and key. All right, he went to a CVS in Los Angeles, and what's under lock and key? The soap. Now, give me a break. But
wow.
That's where we are in California, and it's tragic because I always said when I was in Sacramento, you know, if you guys would get out of the way and let us run the economy and make this a crime-free state, you'd have all the money in the world for your social programs. And by the way, we wouldn't need anywhere near as many of them. But that is not the mindset in Sacramento, unfortunately.
Don Wagner, 2 minutes to you. Quickly, tell us what happens now with this retort from Gavin Newsom to the redistricting that we saw in Texas. How does this end up?
Well, that remains an open question. I've seen polling that suggests that it's a close question right now. What we need to do is recognize and get voters out who recognize that really at base, what Gavin Newsom is saying is, why don't you, the people of California, give up the power that you have and the independent redistricting committee that you created, and let me give that power back to this backroom Sacramento, smoke-filled backroom politicians to draw the lines. Let's really go back to where the politicians are picking their voters rather than you, the voters, are picking the representatives for you in the state legislature, in Congress. That's the cell that Gavin is trying to snooker California with this gerrymandering redistricting provision. The problem is California is weird, and Gavin is trying, and smartly for him, to make this a Gavin Newsom versus Donald Trump fight. And right now, it's a close-run thing. If that catches hold, I despair for my state.
Man, terrible. Don Wagner, I want you to let everybody know how they can keep in touch with you, how they can follow you and learn more about the work that you guys are doing, because you guys got to hold the line in California before it gets everywhere else.
Thank you, Rich. We are trying. My social media handle is at Don Wagner, Don Wagner CA, and my website for Secretary of State run is wagnerforcalifornia.com.
Check out Don Wagner, current supervisor in Orange County, former mayor, former assemblyman, and hopefully he's going to be the future Secretary of State. Don Wagner, I appreciate it, sir. Godspeed to you. Good luck.
Thank you.
You bet. Amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions are coming up right now. Open phones across America. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
And we don't have a motive yet. We don't know yet. We're waiting. Obviously, we've heard what the governor's had to say, what the FBI director said today.
Come on, we don't have a motive yet.
We know
we don't have a motive yet.
What's
really?
happening with
Really, that's CNN's position.
I mean, from law enforcement,
he just happened
Senator.
to fire the gun in celebration.
So that is Senator Ted Cruz arguing with the host at CNN over the alleged motive here, and making the case, making it very plain that we know exactly what happened. He said that the guy hated Charlie Kirk, and he was a left-wing radical, and as a result, he hated him so much he killed him. Now, she's making the case that law enforcement has not laid this out, but the information I'm giving you, I got from law enforcement. So it's an inference, perhaps, that I'm making based on the information provided by law enforcement. But either way, this is the direction we're going. Then you've got the Mr. Gutman from ABC News, who says this is very touching. This is a very touching conversation between the killer and his love interest. And I guess it shapes a lot of the conversation here, where people are saying, we can't soften the language here, right? We can't just say, oh my gosh, well, it's really cute that they really like each other so much and he's willing to go out there and kill people. That's not cute. That's not romantic. We can't romanticize assassinations. That shouldn't happen. And this isn't about a limitation on free speech. This is about uplifting right versus wrong. What do you think? 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And let's see, where do we go? I want to go to John. John is in Northfield, Ohio, WEOL. John, go right ahead. John hung up. All right, no John. I guess let us go to Tim. Tim is in Springfield, Illinois, WTAX. Tim, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Man, I'm getting a little bit better at talking on the radio with you. I freeze up a lot.
You and me both.
Now I started writing it down so I can just read it. It's so much easier. Anyway, I've been trying a few different ways to open up a dialogue with my family and with Democrats about, why they vote Democrat, given the history of the Democrats. And I found that shock treatment...
And you mean like voting against the Civil Rights Act, starting the KKK, things like that?
Oh, yeah, shock treatment. You just say, I would love to go on The View as just a regular citizen and ask Whoopi Goldberg, why should any black person ever vote for a party that started a civil war and killed about 350,000 Republicans? Because to me, I don't say Union and Confederate. I say Republican and Democrat, because that's exactly what it was. Why would they vote for people that the party that wanted to keep them enslaved? And why would they want to hang with somebody that used to hang
them? Tim, earlier... I don't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to make this point. Earlier, I mentioned something about the day that the Kyle Rittenhouse news came out. And I remember the media reported it a certain way that was completely false. He ended up getting acquitted because it was deemed on video that these men were trying to kill him. They were originally dubbed black men that were protesters in a George Floyd riot. And it turned out they were white men that were like gangster people that were shooting at him. And one of them was like a pedophile, a child sex offender. And, it's a whole different story to say that the little white boy left one state with a rifle to go to the other state to go murder these two black men. That was the original story. And it turned out it was the little white boy left because he was part of a group trying to protect property from being burned, went there with his legally issued rifle in his home state where his dad lived, where he lived with his dad, and was trying to protect his property, was attacked by two white guys, took these white guys out because he's a good shot, and was acquitted on all these charges. And it amazed me that it didn't matter what happened in court. The damage was done. People were believing that Kyle Rittenhouse had killed black people. and he did it in malice towards the George Floyd riots. And what ultimately happened here is what you just brought up. You said, how can people, in particular Black Americans, vote for a party that was really against their interest? Very simply, they were told they weren't. You know how many people today, when I debate people on radio or television or wherever it is, and I say, well, you know, the Democrat Party started the KKK. This is not a reach on my side. This is historical fact. And, you know, they got to pull out their phone. They do some research and they go, oh, yeah. But that was before the party switched, right? That's always what you'll hear. You hear that back then the Republicans were the liberals and it was the Democrats that they were conservatives, and then they switched. No, this is not, it's simply not true. I mean, again, this is somebody telling you, don't believe your lying eyes. What you're seeing is not what you're seeing. The reality is that's why people make these decisions and vote the way they do, right? You had Joe Biden. He said, they're going to put y'all back in chains. Remember that? He said that to a black audience about Republicans. They're going to put you back in chains. He's running as a Democrat. The Democrats started. Joe Biden eulogized like the former grand wizard of the KKK, Robert Byrd. I didn't make that up either. I remember that happening. So, again, if you tell people lies long enough, they will believe them. And when you distract people with organized sports, right? You got what else do we have that really distracts people? Music videos. There's so many things that we use for entertainment that become, for so many people, a way of life. They might know every statistic about a sport. They may know every last song on every last album from every last artist, but they don't know their American history. They don't know the facts of what's going on. They don't know who the governor is, who the vice president is, who the lieutenant governor is, who's running in the next election. And Reagan said it best. He said, we have to be informed patriots. Love your country, be a patriot, and be informed. And if everybody did that, I think we'd all be so much better off. Rather than listening to what that guy has to say or what Rich Valdes has to say or what anybody has to say, let's just take a look at the facts. Tim, I appreciate the call. Springfield, Illinois, WTAX, and I wish you Godspeed in creating that dialogue with your family. You sound like a good guy that's trying to do the right thing, and I applaud that. Amigos, we're going to come right back. The rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
I want to say to you that I really appreciate what you're doing for people and their state of mind and their viewpoints on the airwaves every night. I really do appreciate it.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
But the last thing I want to say about Charlie, my friends, is he was more than a political organizer, more than a person who literally helped make me the Vice President of the United States. And I'll never forget it, Charlie, that I would not be here were it not for you. He was a good guy. He was a good friend. I mean, all of these people who have been involved in TPUSA, Turning Point USA, it wasn't just a debate society. It wasn't just a political organization. It gave these kids a sense of home and a sense of purpose in often very hostile places. If you were a young conservative or you were a young Christian and you were worried that a professor might give you a bad grade for being who you were, Charlie's Turning Point USA gave you a home.
That's Vice President J.D. Vance. And singing praises for the dearly departed Charlie Kirk. And I want to continue your thoughts, and there's a lot of people out there want a lot of things that they want to talk about. Let us go back to the phones. Excuse me. Let me see. Where do we go here? Dale is in Eugene, Oregon on KUGN. Dale, go right ahead, sir.
How do you do, Richie?
I do very well, thank you.
I really enjoy your show, and I look forward to it every night.
Oh, thank you. And me too, by the way.
I looked was listening maybe a week, 10 days ago, and there was talk about hate crimes, hate this, hate. I'm going to suggest you replace the word hate with fear. Because in all that way, they're fearful of something. They don't wake up in the morning wanting to hate something. They're afraid of it.
What do you think people are afraid of? Yeah, I do. I'm trying to get you to elaborate for the audience's sake. People that right now, Charlie Kirk was killed because this individual hated him. What do you think he was afraid of? The truth?
He was afraid of Charlie Kirk giving a voice to debating about trans and different type of places.
Oh, so
he wasn't smart enough to.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. So fear that he can't exist, fear that, somehow his life would be impacted because of what Charlie was saying.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it takes a particularly weak person to think that, because of what somebody's saying is somehow going to limit your ability. But I get it. I get what you're saying. Whether it's fear, whether it's hate, whether it's, anger, I think there's a slew of emotions that go through people's minds. And what we all have to make sure of is, just like when we get pissed off on the road and somebody cuts us off, we don't get to hurt those people, right? You don't get to live your road rage. You don't get to do a lot of things when you're angry. And that's part of, I think, being an adult. It's part of living in a civil society. It's part of, if you're a person of faith, it's part of being a Christian or just, a good human being, right? Where I'm going to agree by the social contract we live in to not hurt people who piss me off or disagree with me. And I think that's a fair enough thing to expect to live by. Dale in Eugene, Oregon, thank you for your call. Thanks for your kind words about the show. I really appreciate it. We're going to continue. Let's go to Robert. Robert's in Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Robert, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Rich. I just wanted to let you know that, the Antifa has been a very professional organization for a very long time. I think they got started in 1932, and before Adolf Hitler became Reichsfuhrer. And in 1998, they came to Hoyerswerda, and I was at the parade. I watched them in very closely and saw how excellent they were in terms of the training and the uniforms. And the way the uniforms stuck to their bodies very, very closely. It was a very fine kind of fabric. And you could, and it blended from light gray to dark gray in different areas. You couldn't catch a view of their faces. They were basically all the same size and shape. They were very lithe kind of young men. And one of them pulled out a little baton out of his sleeve and banged the police window so fast it'd make your head spin. You couldn't tell which of the three guys did it, actually. They were so fast. They were perfectly practiced. Amazing.
It's kind of similar to what we see now, right? They're still doing violence. They still try to do it quickly, and they still dress alike.
Yes, they're very professional. World class, I must say.
Yeah, it's not. You're right. It's not a bunch of radicals that are simply anarchists, right? This is a professionalized organization that has training, and they really teach their people what to do and how to disrupt civil society.
Yes, from the first order, I must say.
Yeah. I mean, short of singing their praises, I get what you're saying. We should take them seriously, and I think we do, and I think President Trump did that today in saying, hey, look. These people are the real deal. They are a terrorist organization. This is not just some figment of people's imagination. I think it was Cory Booker, I think. Maybe it wasn't, so don't hold me to that. But who said, this is just an idea. Antifa is just an idea. It's a bunch of people that are against fascism. No, it's not. It's a bunch of people that call themselves anti-fascist and go after everybody they don't like and that they disagree with. And that is simply unacceptable. Robert in Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA, thank you for the call. Let's go to David, San Francisco, California. Go right ahead.
Oh, thanks, Rich. Man, I tell you, I hadn't heard so many lies in a long time. Woody Guthrie, he was one of the most famous of Antifa. He would write on his guitar, "This guitar kills fascists." And so Antifa is very old. And
now,
fighting.
you sound pretty old yourself. Are you part of Antifa?
As you're probably well aware, Antifa is not an organization that exists, but people who hate fascists, they exist. And so,
what do you call Rose City Antifa? That's
Rose
an organization.
City Antifa. Never heard of it.
Well,
But,
look it up. You seem to do a lot of research. You'll be well served by knowing who they are. Anyway, let's make your point quickly.
Yeah, my discussion was going to be about the Kash Patel hearing. If you go about an hour and a half into it, Kash Patel is asked about his holdings in a Chinese law firm. And apparently he has $5 million worth of holdings at minimum by Kash Patel's own markings. He's got a $5 million stake in a Chinese law firm that has to do with the company deals with bogus, Chinese knockoff type materials. Now, the FBI, if you think about going down to the dollar store and buying toothpaste or buying this, that, and the other, you may be buying Chinese knockoffs. And they're selling it for $1, but it may not be Crest. It may not be Colgate. It may not be the hairbrush brand that you're thinking you're buying. You may be buying a Chinese knockoff. And Kash Patel has a stake in the company, the law firm that handles knockoff law firms or lawsuits about these. And so for the FBI
David,
director...
let me just correct the record. Kash Patel has restricted stock units, right, that are valued between $1 million and $5 million. That was his compensation for doing legal work as a consultant for this company. Now, the company you're talking about, they don't sell knockoffs. They sell cheap goods, cheap Chinese goods that are super affordable. And I only know about this. The company's called Shein because there's a documentary on it. And my daughter told me about it because young women oftentimes use this website. And it's like Amazon, but it's out of China. And it's largely, I think a lot of people are using it less ever since President Trump put tariffs into place. But ultimately, there's no malfeasance here, right? There's no ethical concern. Everything seems to be on the up and up. Kash Patel is a lawyer and has been for all of his career. So, to try to malign him because he did work with a Chinese firm that's legit, I don't think that's a crime. But, David, thank you for your call. Amigos, we're going to take a pause right here, coming right back to Salem, Monroe, Mount Hope, Hurley, Berkeley, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, to the phones we go. Live and national, 833-4-VALDES. Mark, Monroe, Wisconsin, WIZM. Mark, go right ahead quickly. The other quickly, Mark. All right, let's go to Joe. Joe is in Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Mark, Joe, very quickly.
Yeah, Rich. Mr. Moore is right. This quarter of a percent is not going to do us any good. The jobs are being lost now again. Inflation is still going up, and there's just too much going on. And the job of the Fed is not to make America great. They're part of the underworld that is their goal is to crash this economy.
It seems that way. It really does, Joe. Thanks for your call, brother. I appreciate it. I'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow. Joe in Salem, Arkansas, thanks for your call. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.